Hello, everybody. Adam Parks here with another episode of Receivables Roundtable. Today, I'm here with my longtime friend, Danny Mez, who's here to tell us what he's been up to. But before we get to that, Danny, let's start with the basics, right? Can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how you got to the seat that you're in today?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me in the first place. It's great to see your face again. And I promise, I am not in my basement. It's actually a very cool industrial building that I'm in, a co-working space. But, I'm just looking at it now. It looks kind of basement-y. So, yes, my tenure in the industry, I joined Resurgent, large debt buyer in 2014. Actually, in the compliance department, I helped design and implement our compliance management program. So this is at the peak, of CFPB power. And, really there just wasn't any room on the front end of the business. We weren't doing much at all. In fact, we stopped buying because supply was too low. Obviously, economics, cost too high. So that was an awesome experience. And I did that for about 3 years. And then Brian Falero, my longtime mentor and friend, brought me into the fold on the front end to do acquisitions. So I did that for about 7 years. And, I was predominantly responsible for developing new business. Resurgent obviously had a tremendous book long before I stepped in that role. All major institutions. So, I did our first fintech deal and kind of developed a business in fintech for ourselves, which we've done, really well with and have phenomenal relationships, for years now, and some other verticals. I got us into auto, or back into auto, I should say, secured bankruptcies, kind of expanded our master servicing portfolio offerings. So a lot of doing more third party work for other lenders who otherwise don't sell debt or didn't know the value of their debt. So that's kind of brought me to where I am a couple months ago, at least.
Up until the last couple of months, right? Which kind of leads us into where you're going. So I know we've had a couple of conversations over the past couple of months, just kind of very general, high-level industry discussions, but you've been holding your cards very close to the vest about what you're up to next. So let me ask the question that everybody wants to know. Like, Danny, what are you up to? What's going on? What's next?
Yes. Thank you for the question. It feels like I'm important or something. People are wondering what I'm doing now. I'm just kidding. So, here's the thing. So my mentor, as I mentioned, Brian Falero, one of the first things he told me was, and actually, I tell this to my kids too, and that was supposed to kind of get me to trust him because I barely knew him, and he said, pick an industry and stick with it because people don't do that anymore. And tenure in an industry brings incredible value to the industry you're serving, as well as in your wallet. So I was in debt buying for 10 years, right? And I was in a pretty key role, but I also knew a lot of folks who started off in collector roles that got all the way up to CEO. And in my mind, and it's a theme I've borrowed from GE and their HR policies around organically growing their employees. I took a step back and I said, I'm kind of doing the major debt buying, right? I'm with a great company and I'm on the front end. What else is there kind of within the distressed receivable space that I could do? And of course, that happened to be timed perfectly with an introduction from a friend of a friend into debt management or debt resolution. People call it all different things. I broadly speaking, it's debt relief, and then a subgroup of debt relief is the debt resolution or debt management space. I found a wonderful group that wanted to develop their business development and marketing. So fast forward, I started OmniArm, which is my own consultancy I've used it for various purposes. It actually started as a distressed real estate buyer on my own, small, obviously very small, but decided to expand that. I can do a bunch of different things with this entity, but of course, and being realistic, 90% of my time is really dedicated to one client, and that is in the debt management space. And I have not actually, now you're making me think, as we were talking earlier, I haven't disclosed it publicly. That firm is called Greenwise Financial Services, and their operating arm is Greenwise Debt Relief.
Okay. And so let's talk a little bit about what that role means, and how does that play into what you were doing previously?
Sure. I think first off, we all know that this space is blowing up. You're right, and I say that in terms of scale, mm-hmm. right? It's a tough time for a lot of people. The pre-charge off and charge off accounts are back to they're normalized since pre-COVID, if not more so. Inflation, right? Like the dollar is worth 20% less today than it was pre-COVID. And then you've got about 45, 50 million Americans who are now struggling with or having to refamiliarize themselves with paying their student loan obligations. Mm-hmm. So, debt buying, debt management, it's all a big industry. And so to me, looking at what I would say is about $80 billion that's currently in some adverse status, delinquency or charged off. I'm turning to this company who wants to grow. So the industry is growing already, but where it's not growing is in the lending space and with the original creditors, right? And I think the intention of hiring me was really to hey, take this opportunity and in my mind, there's some reinventing of the space, but I don't mean that to discredit anyone in the space, because it's more so a perception, and I've come to terms with that as a debt buyer in the front end, dealing with the bringing on new lenders who have over time evolved their own policies and discovered how there are these debt management companies out there that are a lot of their customers are enrolling into, and they're trying to figure out more about it. Right, that's been happening for 5 or 6 years. Mm-hmm. But somewhere along the way, every other creditor, debt buyer, downstream lender, has actually had phenomenal relationships with the debt management companies and have, engaged into partnerships with them. The lenders have not, and I think what I would like to do in my, stint in this industry, and what I feel like could be a forever, industry for me, is to kind of resolve those concerns, because I think we're just talking past each other, to borrow from a term that John Mazzoli used to throw at me a lot. But that's what I think is really happening. I think it's just talking, it's communication versus actual issues. And if someone were to retort and say, here are the issues, I think I'd be able to kind of get some good clarification to kind of resolve those concerns.
So, when we talk about debt relief, right, like obviously that's a really broad category, and then you're kind of honing it in. Talk to me a little bit about like the business model behind what you're focused on.
Sure. So, the target consumer for someone in debt relief is obviously someone whose debts are putting them into a situation that they can't get themselves out of, which not only hits them financially, right, but emotionally it impacts every aspect of their life, of their lives. So debt relief could be in the form of I guess you could even consider minimum payments on your credit card a form of debt relief, right? Because you're keeping yourself afloat, and that's the minimum payment is a relief option in my mind from a credit card company. Then you've got debt consolidation loans, right? That's where the fintech made their name. And and that's a form of debt relief in my mind. They're consolidating their debts, but then you've got where folks are kind of getting too out of control, and now they're looking at debt management companies, credit counseling, and ultimately bankruptcy is a main relief option. So I say realistically, a lot of our business is the folks coming from the debt consolidation loan space, and it's a small subsection, right, of just those folks who ultimately can't get, they've consolidated their debts, they've been doing well, but in this economy, they're falling behind so much so that it's going to be, adversely impacting their future, and many times has already done so, right? Or there's just a financial distress event that happens, and now their consumers are experiencing hardship, and they've had to kind of bypass the earlier layers of the debt relief space, and now they're looking at kind of a debt management option. That's kind of my take on the industry in my 5 weeks as an expert here.
Completely understood. So should we expect to be seeing you at the standard ARM conferences, kind of bridging the gap between these two worlds?
Yes, absolutely. Great question. I absolutely intend to, the industry and Adam, and as a marketing expert yourself, what I didn't necessarily appreciate early on was debt relief in general. Specifically debt management companies rely heavily on advertising, and everyone does today, right? All the debt buyers do with their digital arms. They're trying to pinpoint data points to bring them to the right people at the right time. It's a good thing. It's a good use of data. So I didn't necessarily realize how marketing heavy it was, and honestly, there's a lot of money spent trying to get in front of the right consumers, right? And that's the other thing is, since 2010, from the FTC's enhanced kind of oversight over the debt management space, you can't collect a dollar until you've established enough in an escrow account to start making payments on your first debt. So you've spent these marketing dollars trying to find the consumer, and then labor and time and overhead trying to establish this escrow to build up to a point where they can start making good on their outstanding debts, right? And all of those relationships with the debt management companies, the creditors, to come to some resolution that makes sense for everybody. I think it's because of the lending space being not an active participant directly in the debt management space. So yes, I would like to be at all those conferences and take it more from a lead gen mentality, big Vegas conferences, to more of the going right to the big creditors at the big, ARM conferences. I think that's an opportunity, and I intend to do what I can to help the bridging of that gap.
So how do you expect that you're going to spend your kind of day-to-day time, right? Like, it sounds like there's some big lofty forward momentum that you're going after, but what's your day-to-day going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Adam, like at this point, I'm playing the new guy card a lot. I'm approaching my relationships from that I developed, while at Resurgent. That's no secret. The coveted relationships I made there are immediately applicable here, and for entirely unrelated reasons. But I'm talking to them, and I'm looking for their input and guidance, and just being a quiet kind of a listener, and figuring out where it would be best worth our time to kind of focus effort on, peeling back the layers of the onion and kind of coming to some resolution to bring them into the fold. And then I think it's a matter of, hey, like, take someone that you're unable to work with. Let us help them rehabilitate their finances, right? Mm-hmm. And then return them back into the main lending stream, right back to that very lender who was unfortunately able to assist them not that long prior. That's where I think I'm going to be able to help.
Okay. I think that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. Well, very excited to see what you, how this all starts to unfold and what you come up with next year, Danny. It's always been a pleasure to get to know you through the years, your level of expertise between the creditors, and if you can help to bridge that gap between the debt relief kind of world and that debt collection world and the originating creditor world, I think that could be a really effective mechanism for kind of bridging that gap.
Thanks, Adam. I appreciate that, especially coming from you. Had a lot of success yourself in this industry and many peripheral industries. So, it's I appreciate you letting me kind of speak, with my offer my thoughts on what I've learned so far. And I think I do offer a unique perspective because I'm not trained in this industry at all whatsoever. So, you're getting my fresh thoughts, Adam, and I thank you for letting me share them.
Well, sometimes one of the best things to be is a problem solver, right? A unique and new set of eyes to come in and understand the critical thinking aspects of breaking down a problem, right? Because sometimes it's about just going and addressing that next problem. So, I'm very excited to see what you continue to do through the years, Danny. For those of you that are watching, if you guys have additional questions that you'd like to ask Danny, you can leave those in the comments below, and we'll be responding to those on LinkedIn and YouTube. Or if you have additional topics that you'd like to see us discuss, you can leave those in the comments below as well. And I'm willing to bet I can get Danny to come back at least one more time to help me create great content for a great industry. But until next time, Danny, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you.
Likewise, anytime, Adam.
Absolutely. And everybody watching, thank you so much. We'll see you all again soon.